Good perspective all around from lots of different people. We bring Tim Kane in now for more of that. He's a GOP candidate for the Congress in Ohio, 12th District in Ohio. Tim's also a former senior fellow at Hoover, the Hoover Institute. So let's talk about the economy a little bit as opposed to your race. So I hope that's okay.
Sure.
Fine, if you must. The tariffs. I thought it was interesting in Jay Powell's back and forth today. He was asked about what the impact economically. Forget about markets for a second. We see the gyrations and uncertainty in markets. He was asked about the impact on the economy, and he said basically, well, it's kind of early for that, although we're starting to hear from some people that they're concerned about it. What about the economic impact of all this, given that it's so uncertain? We don't know what actually is going to happen.
So, well, thanks for having me on.
Yep.
I'm really happy to talk. So when my voters here in Central Ohio vote for Tim Kane, they should know they're voting for an economist who's going to fight against tariffs. Tariffs are a bad idea.
Right.
But we're not looking at a tariff trade war here. We're looking at a bad actor who's trying to steal intellectual property. I mean, Chinese trade practices are deeply unfair.
Right.
So even though the fact that 1 in 3 acres here in Ohio are planted for export, we don't want to risk that. We also can't give away, I think the latest report I saw was about $50 billion a year that we lose in intellectual property. Mm-hmm. We've got to guard that too. So this is a long-term investment in growing for the future, and I don't frame it as, are tariffs good or bad? Of course they're bad.
Right.
But we need to have a fair trade with China in particular.
So, all right. So if you say, of course they're bad, isn't there another way? You know, Larry Kudlow's talking about this coalition of the willing. He says give them 24 to 48 hours. I guess we're into that time. He said that this morning.
Yeah.
They're going to put together this coalition of countries, and they'll be on board with us. Are they on board with tariffs? Are they on board with going to the WTO with a complaint? Isn't there a better way of doing this if everybody knows, to use your words, that tariffs are bad?
Right. I think we're so far away from a trade war that gets spoken about a lot. I've heard earlier today on this show. It's maybe a trade battle. There's maybe a trade battle.
Well,
there may
whatever
be
the
some blood
semantics. I mean, there are some tariffs in place already, and there's threats of more. So however you define a trade war, I mean, I don't know. But there's definitely a threat of one. I think you could make an argument that we're already in the early stages of one. Whatever the case may be, I'm asking, isn't there a better way than tariffs to get our intended result, which is to get at China for cheating all these years, especially on intellectual property?
I think this draws some really important attention to a harm that's been done. Intellectual property is very deeply important here in Central Ohio. This is a service sector-oriented part of the state. Most of the businesses in my district are service-oriented. We can't afford to lose our intellectual property as a country, $50 billion a year. Yeah, there's going to be short-term pain, but we have to have this fight. And that's why I said I'd rather have a battle now than a trade war later.
It's interesting that I understand you're running for Congress, but it's interesting you're for it in some ways, as opposed, even though you're so opposed to tariffs. You know what I mean?
Can I just, so this is,
real quick,
when people go to this is my flyer for running, these are my issues, articles that I've written. Number 1 in here, I think, ways to destroy the economy. Number 1 on that is restrict trade.
Right.
Restrict trade.
Yeah, but you're willing to have this fight, which tells me a lot about how the midterms might play out. You know, it's kind of interesting.
No, this is a key to negotiation. You can't get China to take you seriously unless you're serious with the threat of, we're not going to do this kind of trade, because it isn't free trade.
This is going to be a big issue in your race and in other races, as you know. But we thank you for coming on, especially with your experience, to talk about it today. Thanks a lot, Tim. Tim Kane, running for Congress.
Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it. Lauren.
Well, damage control and battled Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg just wrapped up an interview with Fox News' Dana Perino, what she has to say about the mishandling of your personal information and how the company will move forward. Dana will join us right after this. Plus,